So, welcome to Art and Code, and you might have noticed we're not doing updates from the studio today, we're doing updates from the kitchen. I was in a meeting earlier on talking with a whole range of colleagues, and we were talking about production, video, coding, education, a whole load of things. And I said, oh, I'm making some kimchi later. And somebody said, why isn't there a kimchi video on your YouTube channel? And I couldn't really think of a good reason why not. So this is a challenge from one of my colleagues saying, make a video about making kimchi. So this is it. I'm going to be making kimchi that I started last night. I'm going to be going through a recipe that I know, and I've tried a couple of different ones. Let me know comments. I'll put the recipe on GitHub somewhere, and you can fork the recipe and contribute to the recipe. And if there are improvements, issue a pull request on GitHub, and we'll make open source kimchi recipes. So I'm going to go through what I've got here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I have a large bowl of what in the UK we call Chinese leaves, other people call napa cabbage, that I've just taken a sharp knife and cut the end off and brine. So I've soaked it in salted water overnight for 24 hours, a little bit too much, but I've had a really busy day today. And I'm going to drain all of this out. And while the cabbage is draining in the sink over there, I'll show you a couple of other things that you might need. I've got some rice flour, but you can use ordinary flour. I've got an onion. I've got some chili flakes, and if you can get Korean red chili pepper powder, Gochujang powder, that's great. I've got a bunch of garlic. I've got a bunch of sesame seeds, and if you don't have one and you like cooking, this is amazing. This is sesame grinder, which is awesome if you're making ramen or other stuff and makes the sesame seeds explode with taste. I've got some garlic. I've got a couple of chili peppers. I've got some spring onions, and I've got a mooli, which is a big oriental radish. And if you can't get this, you could put turnips in or miss it out completely if you want, but it gives a really nice texture and taste. And the last thing is I've got a bunch of carrots, and for extra I've got some fish sauce. Some people will put dried shrimp in if you can get it from your local shop. If you want to do this vegan, just leave this out because this is made of dead fish. What I've also got, which is a little fancy and you can get, is Gochujang hot pepper paste, which is a fermented chili paste, which is awesome for cooking with if you're cooking Korean stuff, but it's not necessarily at all. And once you've done this a couple of times, you can modify it to suit your own desires. So, coming over to the cabbage. I've got my cabbage draining, and what I want to do is get as much of the moisture out as possible. So I've set that to drain, and then I'm just going to rinse off the salt. That I had this brining in. So this is super fast and no fancy production, and probably the audio is rubbish, but you know, this was a dare from a colleague, so there you go. The great thing about this is you don't have to do any configuration of your IDE, your development environment. You just need a table, and if you can find it, a sharp knife. So I'm going to leave these draining while I get on with the next step. And what I'm going to do is work out how I can set up the camera without melting it. So I've got a saucepan, and I'm going to make a small porridge. So I've got some aforementioned rice flour, and I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of this to 2 cups of water, which isn't as big as a cup, but it's a cup in cooking terms. I don't understand. And mix it up, get it into the pan, and then I'm just going to cook that slowly to make a thin porridge that I'm then going to put all the spices in, and it makes everything stick together, and then it coats all the vegetables, and then I'm going to mix it with the cabbage and stuff it into jars and leave it until it goes nice and sour. So I've got my porridge here, which is my rice flour and 2 tablespoons of rice flour, 2 cups of water, and I'm gonna let that cook through slowly until it starts to thicken and the starch grains in the rice flour start to burst, and then I move on to the next step. So I'm in the kitchen and I've got my rice flour porridge, and the rice flour porridge is starting to go all glossy and to thicken up a little bit like a thin gruel, which I always thought was an awesome name. And then I've got some dark sugar, but use whatever you've got. This is very soft sugar, so it has a really nice taste. And I'm going to put in 2 spoons of sugar, ish, you know. Something like that. And then stir that in, and you can see, because I've used a soft dark sugar, it's got this really nice brown color. It's really glossy, and you can see it's starting to thicken up a little bit, and I'm going to let it cook for a couple more minutes on a sort of low heat to make sure all the starch is cooked through, but I don't want it turned into wallpaper paste. And then I'm just going to let it cool, because we don't want it cooking the vegetables when we put the vegetables in. So that is it. I think I'm going to leave that there, set it to one side, let it cool. I'm going to go and chop some stuff up. So we're going to chop stuff up. I've got a huge bowl to put it in. I'm going to stick the bowl over here, and as I chop, just chuck it in. I've got a slack handful of carrots. I'm going to top and tail them, and then cut them into thin battens. And I'm probably going to do half of this mooli, again cut into battens. And I got a knife, and I sharpened that up. So I'm just going to take these, and then cut them into reasonable kind of pieces. And then I'm going to do the same with half the mooli. And I think then I'm going to also chop up like 3 of these spring onions and just chop them into little pieces. Chuck them all in my bowl over on the back. The porridge is cooling, And then I'm gonna mix up some spices, which is where my garlic and my fish sauce and my chili flakes and a couple of other things, and the ginger comes in. Slam it all in the bowl with the cabbage that's still draining, and then we're nearly good. So I've got a couple of spring onions. I'm just going to take the ends off them and then peel out a skin, rinse them under the cold tap, chop them into little bits. Bit. I'm just going to clear up all this stuff that's left over from the chopping up. We have a fantastic bowl of just chopped stuff. The gruel or the porridge is cooling. My cabbage is draining, and then I'm going to chop up some ginger, some fresh peppers, some garlic, and paste it all together. I've cleaned up my station, clean knife. I'm gonna chop up one large onion, really fine-ish. I'm gonna, I don't know, I'm feeling like that much ginger. We'll see how it smells. One of these chilies, they're not very strong, but I'm gonna test. And I think I'm probably gonna go for, oh no, what do you reckon, YouTubers? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we'll go with that. Like 5 of these cute little garlic cloves, and start with them. Trick that I learned is that if you take the flat of the knife, not like this because that's pointed and sharp, but the flat of the knife, and you hold it and with your palm crush until you get that nice satisfying snap, skin comes straight off. And the other great bonus is if you crush them, you get loads more flavor come out from the garlic. So I'll do a bit more tidying up. I'm gonna chop this, I'm gonna grate this, and because this is nice and fresh, I'm not gonna bother to take the skin off. I'm just gonna use the standard grater, get it all in this bowl, and then go to the next step. So that's my garlic done. That'll go into the bowl. Peel my onion. One onion done. Kind of like so. scrape this into the bowl. Don't scrape it with the sharp side of the knife. Turn the knife over, use the back. Otherwise, it blunts your knife. Grate my ginger. And ginger can be really, really stringy. So I'm just gonna run over that with the knife again. Into my bowl, I'm going to take one of these chilies, and if you're not sure, take the tail off and chew it and see how quickly you start screaming, depending upon how hot they are. What I have found sometimes is the end of the chili is actually really mild and the top gets crazy hot, but these are not very. So I'm gonna chop them, shred them lengthways, then sideways. So I've got my chopped onion, my garlic, my ginger and a chili, and just for good measure you can put chili flakes in if you want. And then I'm going to take it over and zap it with a blender. So nothing fancy. I've got my bowl of ingredients. I've got my staff blender. Put it in a jug blender. Mash it by hand, it doesn't really matter. But it just makes it a little smoother. But if you like your kimchi chunky, this is perfect. I'm going to whiz it in here and make a paste. And then we're nearly ready to go. So we've got blended up, and this is the point where you can put lots of spice in if you want. You can put Korean red chili paste, Gochujang paste, and what I've got is the thing that I showed you earlier, which is this Gochujang paste. And I'm just going to put a tablespoon of this in, mix it in, and we're ready to go. I've got my paste I've just whizzed in. I'm going to take, I think, one of these beautiful, sticky Korean chili paste. Mix it in here. And then I'm going to get my chopped vegetables. And here is that thin porridge we made with rice flour just now, which is cooled down. And then this goes into my vegetables. So we have our chopped vegetables, we have our thin porridge that we made, and we have our chilies and garlic paste. And the only thing that I'm going to do now is add quite a lot of sesame seeds. And I probably should measure this out. I'm going to measure out I think 3 tablespoons. About that much fish sauce, and see how it goes. And the fish sauce tastes so much better than it smells. But when it's in there with the sesame and the garlic and the fresh ginger and the spring onions, and now it's starting to get that actually really sort of pungent but fresh, crispy smell. And I have a bunch of containers, and you can use a plastic container, that's slightly better. These will go in the fridge, and all we want to do is pack it to try and keep the air out from underneath, and it starts doing the probiotic, well, no, basically it's rotting. So I'm going to grab one of my cabbages and the leaves. I'm going to kind of get in there with my hands, or use gloves, because if you're using a lot of chili paste, it'll make your hands go red. And I'm going to coat the leaves one by one with this lovely sticky kimchi mixture. You can take your time doing this if you want. I suggest your favorite beverage and some minimalist electronic music. So I kind of have the first batch, and I've rubbed all of it in my sticky kimchi mixture, and then I'm just going to fold it in half a tiny bit and get it into my first jar. And carry on with the rest. I'm serious about the electronic music. That, or I like dub reggae, but give me some electronic 80s. I do recommend anything from On You Sound. I'll put a link in the video below. Adrian Sherwood may thank me for that, but it's unlikely, though he is like possibly the best producer in the whole world, apart from the other really, really good ones. So I'm going to stuff this in here. A little bit on the top. It's incredibly tidy. You don't get chili splattered all over your kitchen, quite honestly. On to the next cabbage. Right. And if you're not listening to anything from On You Sound, you have to really ask yourself, why not? And I'm going to gently encourage it into the jar. Of course, if you use a bigger container, this is slightly simpler. And I hasten to add that I'm not doing this because porting all the code from my slit scan camera artwork to work with a new high quality camera on a Raspberry Pi isn't working. It's not because it's not working. It's not because I have spent 12 hours trying to fix it and nobody knows. Not at all. So I've got big jars full of kimchi, and I'm just going to use the last of these to soak into the jars. Clean up the last of what I've got here. And the jars, I'm going to push them down, and I want to try and get the air out. Then I can seal them up with a little air gap. If it's right up to the top, they have a tendency of getting a little fizzy, and when you open them, you just get covered in kimchi. So there we have it, 3 jars fresh kimchi. I'm going to wash them, clean down, and then finish up. There we have it. That's kind of one continuous take of making kimchi. And I have 3 lovely big jars of kimchi. These are good to eat, like you could eat it right now, as a really nice, fresh, spicy salad. Leave it a couple of days and you'll see them start to ferment. Keep it in the freezer, in the fridge, and you can keep it there for months. I tend to do batches of a bunch, and I'll do that every couple of weeks. And you can pull it out, you can eat it fresh straight out of a bowl, you can put it into hot pots, you can put it into stews. It works really well with fried pork and tofu. What you can do is pull it out as complete leaves, or pull it out and chop it into small pieces and then cook with it, whatever you like. If you want, I'll stick the recipe below for what I've cooked. And if you're interested, alongside art, coding, making art with machines, I'll cook my favorite kimchi and pork dish and record it if you want. Anyway, so that's kind of different, and this is based upon a dare bet from a friend of mine in a meeting earlier on, who said, so yeah, why don't you stick that on your channel? Yeah, I hope that's been kind of interesting, and I will see you on another video when I get all the code for the Raspberry Pi fixed. Thank you. Bye.